A regular office worker reincarnates as the eldest son of the world's most overpowered family. But there's a catch. His new body has absolutely zero mana. But while his ruthless family thinks he's gone insane for frantically digging in the dirt, he's actually using a hidden gaming system to harvest legendary, high-grade herbs. To survive, he grinds his crafting skills to the limit, trying to build up enough wealth to escape his family before they officially discard him. But when he accidentally brews a legendary cure that awakens his dormant magic and lets him command ancient spirits, he catches the attention of a god-tier witch. Now, powerful figures suspect he might be a missing, world-saving hero, just as his fragile body collapses from pure exhaustion. What will happen when his terrifying family discovers the insane power he's actually hiding? Imagine being born into a family so ridiculously overpowered they can knock birds out of the sky with nothing but their aura and allegedly keep the emperor himself on a tight leash. That is the legendary Asteri family. But there is a massive catch to being born into this kind of power. They are absolute monsters when it comes to meritocracy. If you do not have talent, they do not care if you share their blood. They will kick you straight to the curb. Right now, the servants' gossip mill is working overtime. The whispers in the hallways are all about the eldest young master, Lion Asteri. Rumor has it, our boy just failed his mana, awakening for the third time, suffering another brutal mana shock. The maids are already placing bets that his younger brother is going to take over the family. To make matters worse, Lion has been acting completely out of his mind ever since he recovered. His bizarre behavior started about a month ago. After being bedridden for a long time, he suddenly woke up, spent days muttering absolute nonsense, and then bolted out of the mansion. He sprinted into the backyard during a massive downpour like a man possessed, fell to his knees, and started frantically digging into the dirt with his bare hands. When he finally pulled his muddy, ruined hands out of the earth, he lifted up a glowing plant and screamed in absolute agony, only for everyone to realize he was crying over a common weed. Since that day, he has literally done nothing but pull weeds. There is a very good reason for this madness. The original lion is gone. Inside his body is Baek Yi-hun, a South Korean office worker who quit his job on a whim to escape a toxic boss. To celebrate his freedom, he logged into a nostalgic MMORPG and bought a cozy crafting package, looking forward to a relaxing, low-stress playthrough. Next thing he knows, he wakes up 50 years after the game's final chapter, trapped in the body of this talentless noble. Even though his new body has zero mana, the expensive crafting skills he bought before reincarnating are fully active. While everyone else thinks he is losing his mind, he is actually seeing glowing system notifications in the forest. He is casually harvesting high-grade plants like blue basil and aqua rosemary, unlocking achievements and earning shillings. Once he collects enough currency, a shilling shop will unlock. For our boy, this is his golden ticket. If he can level up his crafting stats and secure enough wealth, he can secure a safe escape before this ruthless family decides to officially discard him. While he is crouched in the dirt, happily harvesting a rare 3-star red sun fern, the family advisor, Sylvia, quietly sneaks up on him. She notes that he seems incredibly dedicated to his new hobby of pulling weeds. Seeing an opportunity to test how his game interface works, Lion holds up the glowing herb and asks if she can see the light coming from it. Sylvia just stares at him with a completely blank look. Yep, the magical HUD is definitely for his eyes only. Then, Sylvia drops some terrifying news. The patriarch wants to see him. This is Pithric Asteri, Lion's grandfather, and the literal human embodiment of the law of the jungle. He is not the kind of guy you want to disappoint when you have zero mana. Realizing he doesn't even have a decent bribe prepared to buy himself some time, Lion panics. He nervously asks Sylvia to tell his grandfather he will stop by later, and quickly asks her for a favor. Meanwhile, up in the patriarch's grand office, Pithric is receiving a status report on his grandson. The old man is already annoyed that Lion has zero mana and spends his days doing lawn care. When Sylvia returns and casually delivers the message that Lion will drop by later, Pithric absolutely loses it. He explodes in a fiery rage, roaring that if Lion doesn't show his face right this second, he is going to burn the entire forest to the ground. Sylvia, completely unbothered, calmly promises to deliver that threat, word for word. But here's the twist. Once Sylvia leaves and the door shuts, the terrifying patriarch drops the scary act and starts grumbling to himself like a sulky child. It turns out he isn't actually furious about the weeds or the lack of mana. He is just deeply offended that his grandson didn't come visit him first to say he was feeling better after waking up, choosing instead to spend weeks ignoring him in the forest. Our boy needs to prepare for his meeting with the terrifying patriarch, but he can't just show up empty-handed. Luckily, the Asteri estate is absolutely loaded, and Lion manages to get himself into a state-of-the-art magical laboratory. We are talking high-grade alchemical equipment, shimmering glass flasks, and complex brewing vessels everywhere. For a guy planning to craft his way to freedom, this place is basically a cheat code. Lion opens up his handy system interface to see what he's working with. Right next to his gathering skill, he has potion brewing. The path to mastery goes from apprentice to skilled, then master craftsman, and finally grandmaster. Higher ranks mean better quality and a much better touch. But how do you level up fast when you are starting from zero? Our boy decides to use the ultimate, time-honored gamer strategy, mindless, repetitive grinding. He resolves to brew and drink a ridiculous amount of potions just to force his level up. He throws some basic herbs into a massive cauldron and starts stirring. He hits the extract command, a surge of energy processes the ingredients, and boom. He officially crafts an Asteri low-grade health potion. He chugs it down, his health bar gets a little top off, and he gets his very first checkmark on the Novice Alchemist Achievement Tracker. 1 down, 99 to go. This is where the grind gets painfully real. Brewing the potions is the easy part. The hard part? He actually has to drink them. Since his health is already completely full, chugging a non-stop stream of recovery potions turns into a brutal endurance test. Bro is bloated, physically miserable, and suffering through intense discomfort, but he refuses to quit. Finally, after forcing down the absolute last drop of liquid torment, the sweet sound of a system chime rings out. He hit the 100 potion milestone, pocketing a sweet 1,000 shillings and boosting his alchemy level straight to apprentice level 4, which unlocks a brand new recipe. Now that his skills are leveled up, it is time to craft the ultimate bribe for his grandfather. Lion sits down and actually uses his brain here. Giving a legendary mage, a mana potion is completely pointless, and a health potion is useless since the old man has top-tier healing mages on speed dial. But Lion knows his grandfather is constantly drowning in administrative paperwork. Sure, powerful mages can use mana to keep their bodies from getting physically tired, but mental exhaustion is a whole different beast. So, Lion decides to whip up a cure for mental fatigue. He gathers the ingredients, works his magic over the cauldron, and executes the extraction. The result is a 2-star mental fatigue recovery potion. This is a rare, high-quality item that a low-level alchemist has no business making. Just catching a whiff of its fresh scent instantly clears Lion's head, and the potion itself works by letting the user recall their happiest memories. Talk about the perfect gift. But the system isn't done rewarding him, because Lion somehow managed to brew something way above his current pay grade. A cascade of notifications flashes in front of him. The system unlocks the possibility of him forming a mana circle, and he instantly activates a new talent called mana distribution, which gives him insanely precise control over his mana. Suddenly, intense blue energy erupts all around him. His dormant power is finally waking up. Our boy is absolutely ecstatic. Not only does he finally have magical potential, but his master plan to escape this terrifying family is looking smoother than ever. Later that day, Lion is chilling back in his room, slumping comfortably into a chair. He is riding high, feeling incredibly proud of how fast he is progressing. The escape plan is solid, his power is growing, and life is good. But as he sits there in the quiet room, a sudden, cold sense of dread washes over him. He sits up, trying to figure out why his spider senses are tingling, and then it hits him. In all the excitement of unlocking his magic and brewing his legendary potion, he completely forgot that his terrifying grandfather is still waiting for him. Now, Pithric isn't just any regular grandpa. He's the head of House Asteri, a legendary hero with enough raw power to establish an independent nation overnight if he felt like it. But right now, despite his god-tier status, he's just a worried grandfather pacing by the window because his grandson is late. Sylvia is standing nearby, watching him fret, and asks why Lion is going to such extreme lengths to brew potions anyway. Pithric grumbles, acting like a classic sundeer. He complains about what the boy is trying to achieve with such a frail body when the family already has unlimited wealth and power. But deep down, he just wants our boy to live a safe, comfortable life without any more danger. Sylvia gently points out that Lion actually looked genuinely happy while crafting his potions. Pithric sighs heavily. Happiness feels like a massive luxury when death is constantly looming over the kid. Lion barely survived his 3rd mana shock, which is basically a medical miracle. Pithric knows they can't rely on luck forever, and he just wants the child to be safe and healthy. Their conversation is cut short when Sylvia announces that the young master has arrived. Lion enters the room, dressed formally and standing respectfully before his grandfather's desk. He politely apologizes for keeping him waiting. When Pithric sternly demands to know what took him so long, Lion doesn't flinch. He calmly explains that his recent near-death experience gave him a lot to think about. He admits that, just like everyone else, he struggled to accept his lack of magic, fearing that admitting his weakness meant he wouldn't have a place in House Asteri anymore. But that fear is in the past. Lion places the glowing blue vial on the desk. He explains that this potion is the result of him finally accepting his limits and working hard to become someone who won't bring shame to the family name. Knowing how exhausted Pithric must be from running the entire estate, Lion smiles and offers the potion as a gift, telling him to drink it whenever he gets a free moment. Pithric is absolutely stunned. Looking at Lion, he can sense a fundamental change in his grandson, something way deeper than just posture or expression. Of course, Pithric's proud, stoic exterior remains completely intact. He loudly proclaims that his own power transcended ordinary limits, but internally, he is absolutely melting. Bro is overjoyed by his grandson's sweet sincerity. To hide his massive embarrassment, Pithrick abruptly dismisses him, and Lion politely bows and exits. The moment the door closes, Sylvia starts teasing the patriarch for looking so incredibly pleased. Pithrick quickly denies it, but his eyes are glued to that glowing blue bottle. He can feel a strange, weirdly familiar mana radiating from the liquid. Sylvia suggests getting it analyzed by professionals, but Pithrick refuses. He wants to experience his grandson's sincerity exactly as it is. Sylvia smiles and leaves him alone. Holding the vial, Pithrick marvels at the craftsmanship. He can tell this isn't something that was just thrown together overnight. Deciding not to let his grandson's hard work go to waste, he drinks it. Instantly, a wave of profound peace washes over him. Long forgotten, cherished memories drift through his mind, and he falls into a deep, gentle sleep. When he wakes up a short while later, he is shocked. His chronic headache, a constant, painful torment he thought he'd just have to live with forever, has completely vanished. Looking out the window at the bright sky, Pithrick feels a deep warmth in his chest. He realizes Lion has the exact same stubborn streak that he does. Smiling softly, he decides he's done keeping the boy sheltered and weak. If there's still a threat of mana shocks, Pithrick will just find a way to stop them himself. He wants them to live together for a very long time. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the estate, Lion suddenly shivers, rubbing his arms as an inexplicable chill runs down his spine. Yeah, someone is definitely plotting something, and our boy's survival instincts are tingling. Over in the courtyard, a group of servants hanging up laundry are gossiping about the young master. One of them actually laughs out loud, joking that Lion's weird weed-pulling phase was probably just him looking for a place to bury himself. But Hannah, Lion's incredibly loyal red-haired maid, is not having it. She angrily confronts them, absolutely furious that so many of Lion's personal attendants are quitting over these ridiculous rumors, especially after everything the young master has done for them. As she's venting her frustration, the male servant's face suddenly goes completely pale. He points shakingly behind her in pure terror. Hannah turns around, and standing right there is the chief attendant. Looking completely serene but radiating a terrifying authority in her dark attire and lace gloves, she calmly asks Hannah to explain exactly what these rumors are all about. Pithrick finally wakes up from his legendary, deeply restorative nap and instantly apologizes to Sylvia for keeping her waiting. He's been a bit sidetracked by, well, sleeping like a baby for the first time in years. When he asks if something urgent popped up so early in the morning, Sylvia doesn't even answer with words. She just holds up the glowing blue potion Lion gifted him and asks if she can run a quick diagnostic on it using her witch's eye. As soon as she activates her magical sight, a glowing ring of ancient runes swirls around the bottle. Sylvia's smug composure instantly evaporates, replaced by absolute shock. She straight up tells Pithrick that there is no way their frail young master made this on his own. In fact, she recognizes it as a variation of the legendary hero's potion. To put this in perspective, 50 years ago, a legendary hero single-handedly ended the war with the demons and then vanished off the face of the earth. This guy was such a powerhouse that no dungeon could hold him, and even the gods hesitated to cross him. For Sylvia, who is currently trapped by a magical contract buried deep inside the Asteri family's labyrinth, this missing hero is literally her only hope of ever gaining her freedom. Finding a potion that smells like his work is a massive deal. Pithrick, however, plays the voice of reason. He points out that while the potion is incredible, it lacks the world-bending potency of the original recipe. There's simply no way their weak, magicless Lion is some secretly disguised god-tier hero. Still, Pithrick is highly intrigued. Having experienced total peace and physical relief after drinking it, the 8th Circle Mage starts wondering if a higher quality version of this brew could help his sister. It turns out Sylvia is actually Pithrick's sister, just hiding in plain sight as the family's advisor. She chuckles at his worry, pointing out that stressing over a 1,000-year-old witch who has a completely disease-free body and mountain-moving magic is a bit ridiculous. She tells him not to go dumping unnecessary expectations on their little grandson. Pithrick looks at his sister with actual tears in his eyes, quietly admitting that he just wanted to cherish the kind heart of the kid who went out of his way to make something for him. Speak of the devil, it isn't long before Lion pops back into the study. Seeing his grandfather wearing an incredibly intense, serious expression, Lion decides to do a little light trolling. He playfully asks if the old man is stressed out, maybe suffering from a lack of sleep, missing his daily workouts, or if his old man's stomach is just struggling to digest greasy food. Annoyed by his grandson's immediate sass, Pithrick snaps at him to shut up before getting straight to the point. He asks Lion if he can brew a potion of even higher quality than the last one. On the inside, Lion is sweating bullets. Crafting even a basic 2-star potion was a total miracle that relied on luck and decent gear. Realistically, his stats are trash, and finding high-grade herbs in the wild is nearly impossible. But Lion knows who buttered his bread. Pithrick is his ultimate financial sponsor. He cannot afford to lose this golden opportunity. Pushing his panic aside, Lion puts on a confident face and promises that while it'll take some time, he can definitely get it done. When Lion asks who the lucky recipient of this high-grade potion is, Pithrick casually mentions he plans to give it to the head maid. And right there, Lion's brain completely misfires, initiating a massive misunderstanding. He immediately assumes his grandfather is feeling lonely after the passing of grandmother, and is trying to shoot his shot with the head maid by gifting her a high-end potion. Lion is so deeply moved by this imaginary elderly romance that he stands there holding back tears, nodding in solemn, bro-to-bro sympathy to show he understands. Fired up to be his grandpa's wingman, Lion eagerly asks for 2 weeks to deliver the ultimate love potion. But when Pithrick reacts with visible shock, Lion completely misinterprets it. He assumes his grandpa is impatient and doesn't have that kind of time to waste. Panicking, Lion hastily corrects himself, promising to bring back a high-grade potion in just 1 week. He scrambles out of the room to get to work, leaving a thoroughly baffled Pithrick shouting in confusion behind him. Once he's outside, the post-hype clarity hits. How on earth is he supposed to craft a 3-star potion in 7 days? He doesn't have time to grind his brewing levels, and with his low proficiency, trying to process high-grade herbs would probably just ruin the materials. Desperate, he pulls up his shilling shop menu, hoping he can just pay to win. But the system store is a total disappointment. It's heavily restricted, only letting him preview items that cost under 100,000 shillings, and the item descriptions are so blurry he can barely read them. Worst of all, the prices are outright highway robbery. Basic, everyday gear like a pair of sharp scissors, a simple fishing rod, and an old key are listed for a staggering 10,000 shillings each. Even magical seasonings are priced that high. Realizing the system is completely ripping him off, Lion shuts down the window in frustration. Since pay to win is out of the question, he has to go the old school route, find high-quality crafting tools in the physical world to naturally carry his success rate. Lion heads down to the local smithy. The moment he steps inside, he's greeted by a muscular blacksmith with a bright red beard and braided hair who is loudly arguing with his assistant, complaining about how they are way too busy to deal with any annoying interruptions. Walking right into the doorway, Lion politely introduces himself. Dressed in incredibly fancy, high-end noble clothes, he flashes a confident smile and asks if he can rent out the forge to try his hand at smithing. Before the angry blacksmith can even open his mouth to kick this rich kid out, Lion slams a massive, heavy pouch overflowing with glittering gold coins onto the table. Money talks, and Lion just offered a ridiculously massive payout just to use their hammer. Before our boy even stepped foot inside the workshop, he was standing outside, eyeing the local tools like a disappointed critic. He checked out a few basic trowels hanging on the wall and realized they were absolute garbage. They would probably break after 5 minutes of actual work, and buying them would just be throwing money away. Even if he pulled the "do you know who my family is?" card to get a master craftsman to make one, it would take days. Lion was on a tight deadline, so he came to a bold conclusion. He would just build the high-grade tools himself. Cut to the present. Lion walks into the forge and drops a heavy bag of gold coins in front of the owner, Millionth Mudu. But instead of being thrilled by the easy payday, Mudu is just incredibly annoyed. He is a dwarf with a massive beard, and right now, his forge's fire is dying. He has zero patience to play babysitter to some rich, noble kid. His younger brother and assistant, Sean, is basically sweating bullets, frantically trying to return the gold and offering to just give Lion a regular trowel for free so they can get him out of the shop. But Lion is locked in. He looks at Mudu and realizes this guy is a literal dwarf. In this world, dwarves are basically cheat codes for craftsmanship, possessing insane strength, ridiculous precision, and the ability to handle fire without getting burned. Finding a real dwarf running a forge in Asteri territory is a massive stroke of luck. When Mudu demands to know who this kid is, Lion introduces himself. The second Mudu hears House Asteri. The pieces click. Ah, yes. It is the famously eccentric young master. Amused by Lion's reputation, Mudu's grumpy exterior immediately melts. He tells Sean to set up a workspace for the kid and let him build whatever he wants before walking off. Sean takes Lion on a tour of the pristine, high-end workshop. Everything looks state-of-the-art, but Lion notices a weird detail. Despite having top-tier tools, the actual metalwork sitting around is shockingly low quality. That is when a system alert pops up in Lion's vision, pointing out a weak, lesser fire spirit shivering inside the hearth. Lion casually asks Sean if the fire is always this pathetic. Sean scratches his head, admitting the firepower has indeed been dying down lately. Overhearing this, Mudu stomps back, demanding to know how a pampered noble could possibly notice something like that. Lion just shrugs and drops a classic line. The fire told him. This completely blows Mudu's mind. He kicks Sean out of the room so they can talk in private, looking at Lion intensely. He asks if Lion can seriously see the spirit and if he can fix it. Lion, playing it cool, says it is likely possible. Desperate to save his business, Mudu throws down an incredible offer. If Lion can restore the fire spirit, Mudu will personally teach him blacksmithing and give him priority ordering rights for all future commissions. Since this forge is so famous, it gets orders from foreign kingdoms, This is basically a golden ticket. Naturally, Lion eagerly shakes on it. Mudu explains that they are on the verge of bankruptcy. The fire spirit is completely exhausted, and relying on artificial heat is ruining the metal. Since dwarves cannot talk to spirits, Mudu was completely helpless. Lion translates the spirit's actual complaint. The little guy is just incredibly thirsty. Mudu's first instinct is to throw water directly onto the hearth, but Lion has to stop him before he accidentally extinguishes the poor thing. Desperate, Mudu promises to give Lion his personal masterpiece, or literally anything else he wants if he pulls this off. That night, Lion finds himself working overtime alone in the dusty workshop. He has to laugh at the irony of escaping his past life, only to end up doing unpaid late-night shifts in a fantasy world. But looking at the system screen, the spirit's life force is rapidly draining. He needs to act fast. Lion realizes he has the perfect cheat item in his inventory, aqua rosemary. He opens up his crafting menu to whip up some aqua rosemary oil. It is normally used as a fancy meat seasoning, but the refreshing, moisture-packed oil is exactly what a dehydrated fire spirit needs to bounce back. He carefully processes the ingredients, brewing a glowing green-blue batch, and pours it into the dying fireplace. The little spirit slurps it up, feeling a bit better, but it is still hungry. Lion cheerfully cooks up another batch and dumps it in. The hearth erupts into a roaring, healthy blaze. The spirit starts happily dancing in the flames, and Lion gets a sweet 30% boost to his spirit communion talent. Satisfied and warm, Lion finally lets himself rest by the crackling fire. The next morning, Mudu runs into the workshop, expecting the worst, only to see the forge burning brighter and hotter than ever. Overjoyed, he runs toward Lion to celebrate, but stops dead in his tracks. Lion looks absolutely ghostly, his face pale and completely drained of energy. Lion tries to weakly wave it off, mumbling that he is just a bit tired from the all-nighter. But before he can even finish the sentence, his legs give out, and he collapses straight onto the cold floor. Mudu completely loses his mind, screaming in pure panic, begging the young master to open his eyes. After face-planting onto the cold floor and giving Mudu a minor heart attack, our boy Lion finally wakes up. He is not in a dark, dusty workshop anymore, but inside Mudu's cozy home with the morning sun shining through. Before he can even fully process where he is, two tiny kids, Mudu's son and daughter, are peeking over the edge of the dining table, staring him down like he's an alien. When they playfully demand his name, Lion decides to play along and jokingly calls himself Golden Branch. Not to be outdone, the little boy proudly claims his own name as Jade Leaf. Watching them laugh and bicker gives Lion a sudden hit of nostalgia, reminding him of his younger sibling from his past life, who was always pretty prickly and distant. This quick walk down memory lane leads to a very solid realization. Lion figures that as long as he stays far away from his younger brother in this world, his life will be smooth sailing. He has absolutely zero interest in getting dragged into a toxic family inheritance war for the Astery Patriarch spot anyway. Right on cue, Mudu's wife, Leah, walks in to serve him a warm bowl of soup, immediately scolding the kids for pestering their guest. Lion laughs it off and introduces himself properly, but the kids decide young master sounds way more prestigious and refuse to call him anything else. Leah warmly apologizes for the chaotic household, explaining that Mudu was so incredibly grateful for him saving the fire spirit that he insisted on bringing him home to eat and rest up to settle the debt. Speaking of the man of the hour, Mudu walks in covered in soot, carrying his giggling kids on his back. Seeing that Lion has finished his meal and looks alive, Mudu smiles and announces it is time to head back to the forge. When they step into the workshop, Mudu shows Lion a massive, neatly stacked pile of premium iron ingots. It turns out Mudu prepped all of this beforehand so Lion wouldn't have to burn himself out doing the brutal, heavy labor of smelting. Honestly, what a bro. Lion is eager to get to work and asks for a quick demo. Mudu is more than happy to show off his skills, grabbing his hammer to teach him the absolute basics. He explains how a smith has to constantly watch the iron's temperature, making sure it glows hot without turning into a liquid puddle. He demonstrates how to control your force, keeping the blade thin but the body thick so the tool actually lasts, before refining the metal on a whetstone and adding a wooden handle. Simple enough, right? Lion steps up, tosses some fresh wood into the forge, shocking Mudu with his chaotic energy, and starts swinging. His first attempt? An absolute, unsalvageable disaster. The metal completely melts into a sad, useless blob. But our boy does not know how to quit. He grips his hammer tighter and just keeps trying, going back to the anvil over and over. His completion rate slowly ticks up from 30 to 40%. His hands are literally shaking from the physical strain, but his stubbornness pays off. All that grit triggers a sudden system notification. Lion has officially unlocked the blacksmith talent, immediately jumping to apprentice level 1. Mudu, who was honestly looking pretty worried, suddenly gasps. Lion's entire posture and the way he swings his hammer completely shift, taking on a smooth, rhythmic force. Fired up by the sudden glow-up, Mudu starts loudly cheering him on, directing his strikes while the fire spirit happily joins in to help. With one last, massive swing, they finish the tool. The system chimes in with a perfect 100% completion rate. Lion has just crafted a masterpiece Astery-made hoe. Since it is packed with the fire spirit's warm energy, this high-grade tool will massively boost his gathering speed and drastically increase his chances of finding rare herbs. Mudu is completely blown away by this kid's freakish talent, praising the hoe as a literal work of art and telling him to take a well-deserved break. But Lion is fully locked in. Instead of resting, he immediately demands to learn how to make a sickle next. Mudu just laughs heartily, calling him an absolute madman of dedication, and happily agrees to keep teaching him. That night, Lion pulls another exhausting shift in the forge. And why is he grinding this hard? Because of that glorious misunderstanding. He is still completely convinced he needs to craft the ultimate tools so he can brew a premium potion to help his grandfather secure his romantic pursuit of the head maid. You have to respect the hustle, even if it is based on a total lie. Equipped with his new masterpiece hoe and sickle, Lion heads into the forest the next day to test them out. The difference is night and day. He easily digs up a rare finger ginseng, a delicate, stamina-boosting root, realizing his new high-grade gear unlocks a whole new tier of rare herbs. He smiles confidently, knowing a grade 3 potion is officially within reach. As he wanders deeper into a clearing, he spots a weird little mound of dirt covered in sweet potato leaves. Eager to try his new toy, he raises his masterpiece hoe and slams it into the ground with a powerful thud. Suddenly, a bright flash of warm fire erupts right in front of him, startling him. A system notification chimes. The fire spirit's blessing inside the hoe has activated. Once the harmless flames clear, Lion is left standing there in pure, utter confusion, holding a plate of perfectly roasted sweet potatoes. Standing there in the middle of the woods, Lion pulls up his system menu to figure out why his brand new hoe just turned a random dirt mound into a fresh meal. Turns out, it's a passive skill called the Blessing of the Fire Spirit. Whenever he gathers anything edible, there is a random chance it instantly gets roasted. He takes a bite of the steaming sweet potato, and it is delicious, sweet, nutty, and cooked just right. As he's enjoying his magical snack, 3 little white birds flutter down. Lion smiles and breaks off a piece for a particularly fluffy one that lands near his hand. Watching the little guy happily peck at the food triggers a sudden wave of nostalgia. He finds himself thinking back to his past life, remembering an old gaming companion he used to hang out with, wondering how they are doing now. But there's no time to get too deep in his feelings. He digs up a few more sweet potatoes, notes how much his high-grade hoe has expanded his herb-gathering options, and packs up to head back. Meanwhile, back at the Asteria estate, the servants are practically losing their minds. John and the crew are pacing around the gardens, stressed to the absolute limit. It's been 3 full days since Lion vanished into the smithy, and the local rumor mill is already working overtime. People are whispering that our boy is either about to get kicked out of the family, or he has already collapsed and died from his notoriously weak body. Just as the panic is reaching a boiling point, Lion casually strolls into the garden like he just went for a quick walk. He is carrying a bouquet of blue flowers, looking completely exhausted and messy, with that same tiny white bird still chilling on his shoulder. He waves off their horrified looks, insisting he is totally fine. Sylvia steps forward in her head-maid persona, telling him he really doesn't need to push himself this hard. Of course, Lion immediately misinterprets this. He figures his grandfather just couldn't keep a secret and must have let their deal slip. Smiling proudly, Lion tells her she doesn't need to worry because he already gathered all the ingredients ahead of schedule. The servants frantically try to offer him medicine for his various scrapes, but Lion just brushes them off and runs straight to his workshop, eager to start brewing. Watching him sprint away, Sylvia is left with a complicated mix of worry and a strange, sudden hope. Since she is actually a witch, normal human potions do absolutely nothing for her. But seeing this frail, sickly boy spend days working in a scorching forge and digging up herbs all night just to help her touches something in her. She starts to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this kid might actually pull off a miracle. A few days later, Sylvia is meeting with Pithrick in his private study, holding a glowing blue vial. 1 sip is all it takes. The heavy, decades-long magical fog that had been clouding her mind and emotions completely vanishes, leaving her thoughts sharper than they've been in ages. Shocked, she asks Pithrick if he secretly stepped in to help the boy brew something this powerful. But the patriarch shakes his head. He had nothing to do with it. This means Lion created a literal hero's potion entirely on his own. Instead of celebrating, though, a heavy silence falls over the room. In this world, a hero isn't a glorious title. It's a tragic fate. True heroes are destined to fight endless, brutal battles to save a world in chaos, experiencing nothing but despair and emptiness, only to vanish without a trace the moment peace is finally restored. Pithrick, who lost a dear comrade to this exact cycle decades ago, is absolutely devastated. He refuses to let his own grandson get dragged into that kind of tragic destiny. Sylvia smiles gently and suggests they simply hide their little puppy from the world. Right then and there, she announces she is retiring from her role as the family advisor. Pithrick slams his hand on his desk, furious and confused. He asks if she has lost her mind, reminding her that she has spent literally centuries wishing to be free of the magical contract binding her to the Asteri family, and now she's throwing her freedom away for Lion. But Sylvia just calmly points out that worrying about a witch is a waste of energy. According to her contract, while she can't physically leave the Asteri territory, there is nothing stopping her from living as a normal human within its borders. Lion's presence made her feel human again, and she is more than willing to pay him back. With a soft glow, she sheds her elderly maid illusion, revealing her true form, a stunning, dark-haired witch with piercing red eyes. She vows to protect him from the shadows, ensuring no one finds out what he is truly capable of. It doesn't take long for the news of a sudden staff shakeup to travel. Down the hall, in a sunlit, luxurious study, Rixel Asteri, the second son of the family, sits with his hands clasped. He stares out, a quiet, intrigued smile playing on his lips as he contemplates the strange news that his seemingly useless older brother, Lion, has just been assigned a mysterious new exclusive maid. Inside the Grand Asteri Castle, we find Lixel, the second son of the family. This kid is an absolute prodigy. At a remarkably young age, he is already the youngest fourth circle mages in their history, looking and acting so much like their grandfather, Pithric, that everyone basically views him as the undisputed successor to the Archmage title. But being a genius means he is also incredibly cautious, and the news of Lion suddenly getting a mysterious new exclusive maid immediately sets off alarm bells in his head. Looking over the paperwork for Sylvia's sudden retirement, Lixel knows something is deeply off. Why would a woman who served as the family's advisor for centuries suddenly step down the exact same day Lion somehow brews a miracle potion, only for a new maid to instantly take her place? The night before, Lixel actually confronted Sylvia about her sudden departure. She just gave him a warm smile, explaining that Lion's potion had been a massive help to her. When Lixel openly doubted that his supposedly useless older brother could have ever made something so powerful, Sylvia just teased him. She suggested he go pay Lion a visit, playfully reminding him of how he used to follow his big brother around everywhere when they were kids. Lixel tried to act all embarrassed and dismiss it as a childhood phase, but seeing how relaxed and relieved Sylvia looked made him wonder. Was this miracle really his brother's doing? Driven by a need to see the truth with his own eyes, Lixel tracked his brother's whereabouts and headed straight for Mimir Forest. Entering the gloomy, pitch-black woods that night, Lixel is already regretting his life choices. He grumbles about the creepy atmosphere, completely baffled as to why Lion would even want to hang out in a place like this when he could literally just order his servant, John, to gather whatever herbs he needs. Suddenly, Lixel hears a rustling sound in the underbrush. Peering through the dark trees, he spots Lion crouching on the ground, reaching for something in the dirt. To Lixel's absolute horror, Lion pulls up a dirty, roasted sweet potato and actually prepares to take a bite out of it. Terrified that his frail brother is about to poison himself with literal dirt, Lixel panics and unleashes a sudden gust of wind magic to knock the food out of his hand. The spell does its job a little too well, completely obliterating the sweet potato into inedible mush. Lion is instantly furious, clenching his fists and demanding to know who just ruined his dinner. But when he looks up and sees his little brother standing there, his anger melts into pure confusion. Realizing his cover is completely blown, Lixel tries to salvage his dignity by proudly lecturing Lion on hygiene, arguing that eating dirty things off the forest floor is wildly unscientific. Lion just gives him a deadpan look. He points out that it's a sweet potato, which, naturally grows in the dirt. Since Lixel is a sheltered noble who has never seen peasant food in his life, he tries to save face by calling it a starch-rich root vegetable. Lion is completely dumbfounded. He asks if his genius little brother has seriously never eaten a sweet potato before, teasingly telling him that he is seriously missing out on life. Lion tells Lixel to take a seat while he digs up some fresh ones. Remembering his brother can use fire magic, Lion asks if he would mind starting a campfire for them. Lixel quietly agrees, and before long, a warm, cozy fire is crackling away in the freezing forest. Lion wraps up the fresh sweet potatoes and tucks them right into the glowing embers. Lixel watches anxiously, worried they are just going to burn to a crisp, but Lion reassures him that the thick skin protects the inside, letting them cook perfectly. As they sit together on a large log, Lion remarks that taking a step back and just relaxing is just as important as constantly running forward. Watching the dancing flames, Lixel quietens down, softly admitting that he is beginning to understand. Once the sweet potatoes are ready, Lion pulls them from the embers and hands one over. Lixel hesitates for a second, but the moment he takes a bite of the steaming food, his eyes go wide. It is incredibly delicious. The cold, gloomy forest suddenly feels incredibly cozy as Lixel completely forgets his noble manners and starts devouring the sweet potatoes with a massive teenage appetite. Lion just watches in quiet amusement, thinking about how much growing kids can actually eat. When Lixel finally stops and notices the mountain of empty skins piled up at his feet, his face turns bright red, utterly embarrassed by how much he just stuffed his face. Lion just smiles warmly and tells him to eat as much as he wants, genuinely thanking Lixel for working so hard on behalf of the family in his place. Hearing this makes Lixel's expression go somber. He points out that while being the sickly sibling is incredibly difficult, it is also really hard on the people who have to stand by and watch them suffer. But Lion gently shuts down the guilt, telling his brother that he has never once considered him a burden, nor has he ever blamed him for anything. Getting surprisingly emotional under the starry night sky, Lixel finally confesses the truth. He admits he was actually jealous of Lion, envious of the quiet freedom his older brother got to have. He quickly tries to play tough again, insisting he is perfectly happy with his position and will continue to do his absolute best for the family, but Lion just laughs softly. Placing a warm, reassuring hand on Lixel's shoulder, Lion tells him he is still just a kid. He encourages his younger brother to be a little selfish sometimes and actually take the breaks he deserves. Looking at his brother, Lixel is deeply moved, finally understanding what Sylvia meant. Sitting close together by the crackling campfire under the stars, Lixel lets out a genuine smile, deeply glad he chose to come find his brother tonight. Our boy Lion is chilling on his luxurious bed, checking out his system interface. He is currently sitting on 71,500 shillings, and since the shilling shop fully unlocks at 100,000, he is tantalizingly close to accessing the good stuff. He stretches, feeling incredibly relaxed. There are wild rumors floating around the estate that he got punished for brewing that miracle potion for his grandfather, but he honestly couldn't care less. He even chuckles to himself, thinking it is a bit of a tragedy that his grandpa got rejected by the head maid, Sylvia. But hey, the old man's love life is none of his business. More importantly, Lion has actually bonded with his younger brother, Lixel. Now that he doesn't have to worry about being immediately kicked out of the family, Lion figures it is finally time to go out and treat himself. Just as he is gearing up to head out, there is a knock at the door. In walks the new maid, Elvia. She is a striking woman with long black hair and intense red eyes, looking straight out of a mysterious fantasy lineup. The second she enters, Lion gets this weird, inexplicable gut feeling of discomfort, but he quickly shrugs it off. I mean, this is a fantasy world with dwarves and magic, so meeting people from mysterious races is basically just a typical Tuesday. Lion welcomes her and mentions that, thanks to her arrival, he actually managed to bridge the gap with his brother. Elvia just politely bows, playing totally dumb. Lion doesn't push it, smiles, and tells her they can catch up later since he has plans to spend the day out with Lixel. Meanwhile, Lixel is waiting outside, but his brain is in absolute overdrive with anxiety. He has been quietly watching Lion's daily routine, and he is deeply concerned about how incredibly frail his older brother is. He vividly remembers times when Lion would literally faint from the sheer physical strain of digesting food. Lixel is terrified that those devastating mana shocks permanently ruined his brother's health, and he is determined to get a priest to diagnose him before the upcoming coming-of-age ceremony. But there is a catch. The magic-focused Astery family has a notoriously icy relationship with the temple, so Lixel can't just book a normal appointment. Instead, he cooks up a clever plan. He will take Lion volunteering. Since the temple is highly supportive of charity, donating goods is the perfect cover to introduce Lion to the priests without drawing the family's attention. As they walk through the busy town streets, Lion asks where they are actually going. Lixel points out that two noble kids walking around in broad daylight will immediately draw a crowd, so they need disguises. Lion suggests a normal clothing store, but Lixel has other plans. He leads him to a hidden, sketchy-looking magic shop with a pointed roof. They are greeted by a cheerful, bald shopkeeper boasting that his store has absolutely everything. When Lixel asks for disguise tools, the guy enthusiastically pulls out a high-end item called the Perfect Child Golden Hairpin. It is a magical accessory that completely changes your hair color, eye color, and any identifying features for 10 hours. It is pretty expensive, but Lion has the cash to burn, so he happily buys it. And because he spent so much, the shopkeeper slips a highly valuable freebie into his bag, an artisan's repair set, which can repair any damaged item as long as it is artisan grade or lower. The two brothers duck into a quiet alleyway to try on their new look. With a soft hum of magic, the hairpin does its thing. Lion's hair and eyes shift to a plain brown and blue, and Lixel gets a makeover too. They step back onto the street looking like totally ordinary townspeople, blending in seamlessly. But then Lion gets thoroughly confused when Lixel drags him straight to a wooden mill instead of a temple. Lixel explains that flour is a top-tier donation item and they are just checking on their order. In reality, Lixel is playing chess. He wants to meet the mill's owner, Nicholas, who is a super devout believer with a massive donation network. Lixel figures if they build a solid relationship with this guy, they can easily secure a private, hassle-free introduction to a temple priest. Nicholas welcomes the disguised boys warmly and presents several sacks of pristine, freshly milled wheat. Seeing two young kids buying this much flour, Nicholas asks what they are up to. Lixel plays his part, explaining with gentle sincerity that he saw starving kids in the territory and just wanted to help. Nicholas is deeply moved. He asks if they have a specific donation site in mind, and Lixel is internally begging the man to suggest the temple. Right on cue, Nicholas recommends the orphanage run by the temple. He explains that their subsidies have plummeted recently, and since the magic-obsessed Asteria state only cares about research, prestigious noble families rarely support temple charities. Nicholas is pretty sharp, though. Looking at their massive order and polite way of speaking, he instantly pieces together that these two are secretly from a highly prominent noble house. While Lixil is internally celebrating his plan working out, Lion steps forward to point out a major, realistic flaw. He points out that even if they donate all this raw flour, it is still going to take the orphanage a ton of time and effort to actually turn it into edible food. Nicholas looks surprised by the practical feedback. Lion turns to his younger brother with a confident grin and proposes an even better idea. They should just use the flour to bake fresh bread right here and now, so the hungry kids can actually eat the moment it is delivered. Lion crosses his arms and drops some quick logic. He suggests they use the freshly milled flour to bake the bread right now. His reasoning is simple. Sure, the kids might get flour, but they probably do not have other essential ingredients like yeast or oil. If they are going to do a good deed, they might as well go all the way and give the kids warm, freshly baked bread. Nicholas, the mill owner, is immediately sold. He proudly boasts that his shop makes the most delicious bread in the territory and eagerly agrees to the plan. Lixil is just standing there, completely awed by his older brother. The poor kid was so laser-focused on finding a way to get Lion's health checked that he did not even think about the actual logistics of donating raw flour to orphans. Seeing how attentive Lion is to these small, practical details deeply impresses him. They head inside the spacious, rustic mill, and Nicholas lays out some high-quality olive oil and whole wheat flour. Lion already knows that using the good oil is going to make this taste incredible. Nicholas starts giving them a hands-on demonstration, showing them how to mix the flour with yeast, salt, and milk before letting the dough ferment in an oil-coated container. He then shows them how to gently press out the air bubbles, fold in some crushed sunflower seeds, and shape the dough into round loaves. Lion watches this and smiles. Compared to the massive headache of studying complex magic formulas, baking bread feels like a total breeze. Time to put their skills to the test. Nicholas throws his first batch and Lixil's dough into the oven. Lixil gets a bit too greedy with his portion size, so his first loaf ends up with a slightly burnt crust. Nicholas is super nice about it, warmly dismissing it as a decent first try. But Lion's bread bakes to a beautiful, glowing golden brown. It is crisp and chewy on the outside, yet incredibly moist and soft on the inside. This successful bake instantly bumps Lion's cooking proficiency up to apprentice level 2. Nicholas is literally holding the warm roll in a sweating hand, completely astounded that a young noble managed to pull off professional level baking on his very first attempt. When Nicholas asks how on earth he achieved such a result, Lion just plays it cool and humble. He says he did not do anything special. He just wanted to make sure the kids got plenty of delicious, beautifully scored loaves to enjoy. That completely melts whatever skepticism Nicholas had left. He realizes these boys are not just wealthy nobles playing commoner for a quick ego boost. They actually care. Determined to match their kindness, Nicholas packs a bag and asks them to pause their baking for a moment while he runs out to handle something urgent. Lixil is a bit worried they might have inconvenienced the busy shopkeeper, but Lion tells him not to sweat it. They keep the oven running and bake dozens of fresh loaves while they wait, steadily grinding Lion's baking achievements. When Nicholas finally returns, he is not alone. Moved by their generosity, he went out and rallied a whole crowd of smiling villagers to help with the charity drive. Among the crowd, Lion spots Leah, the blacksmith Mudu's wife. She is filling in because her husband is busy at the forge. She spots Lion and is about to call him out in surprise, but Lion quickly puts a gloved finger to his lips, giving her a silent shh to keep their disguises intact. The villagers start unloading massive crates of fresh meat, milk, and clothing. There is even a legendary local woman who is rumored to wrestle bears in her free time, carrying a massive, glowing pile of fresh potatoes like it is nothing. Seeing the whole community come together like this makes Lixil swell with pride. He whispers to Lion that he is destined for greatness. But Lion is actually having a bit of a moral crisis. He feels a sudden wave of shame, realizing that he originally set this whole thing up just to manipulate Nicholas into introducing him to a priest. But seeing everyone pour their hearts into this project, resulting in something so genuinely beautiful, really hits him. A few hours later, their caravan arrives at the grand orphanage run by the temple. The director is literally moved to tears, weeping in deep gratitude as the children crowd around the crates, absolutely losing their minds over the smell of fresh bread and the new clothes. The director asks the brothers if they would mind handing out the food themselves, and they happily agree. Sitting by the baskets in their commoner disguises, the two noble brothers start handing warm loaves to the beaming kids. As Lion is handing out the food, he spots a young boy standing under a tree. The kid is just staring at them with a totally startled look. But before Lion can say anything, the boy suddenly turns around and bolts. A bit confused, Lion asks the director about him. She sighs apologetically and explains that his name is Peter. She tells Lion not to worry about it, explaining that the orphans are still very young and sometimes struggle to process such overwhelming kindness. Lion looks back toward the empty space under the tree where the kid just fled, quietly repeating the name Peter to himself. In the sunlit courtyard of the orphanage, the volunteers have finally finished handing out warm bread to almost all the kids. But as Lion carries his wooden basket under the bright sky, he notices someone is missing. He turns to the director and asks where Peter is, pointing out that the little guy hasn't gotten his share yet. The director lets out a heavy sigh, and the story she tells is honestly heartbreaking. It turns out Peter is incredibly shy, and his extreme withdrawal has actually caused his adoption to fall through 3 separate times. Ever since those painful rejections, the poor kid has stubbornly refused any donated food or supplies, completely closing himself off from the world. Determined to help, Lion goes searching around the grounds and eventually finds Peter sitting all by himself under a tree, hugging his knees with his face buried in his arms. Looking at his hunched little figure, Lion notes that while the boy looks to be about the same age as the blacksmith Mudu's kids, he is far too thin. Lion walks over and gently kneels on the grass right next to him. Softly calling his name, he offers him a freshly baked roll, teasingly telling him that it's the very last one, and describing just how warm and fluffy it is. Peter keeps quiet and refuses to look up, but his stomach completely betrays him with a loud, rumbling growl. You can't argue with biology, kid. Lion smiles, playfully asking if he's hungry. He realizes that if Peter were just throwing a normal temper tantrum, he could easily play along with it. But the fact that this boy is stubbornly refusing to eat, even while starving, means he needs real, patient care. Meanwhile, Nicholas and the other villagers finish wrapping up their work. They start waving goodbye to the orphanage staff, preparing to head back to town. Believing the volunteers have finally left, Peter slowly lifts his head. He looks around the now quiet yard and mutters bitterly about hypocrites who only do charity to feel good about themselves before abandoning the kids and never returning. But when Peter turns his head, he gets the shock of his life. Lion is still sitting right there, cross-legged on the grass beside him. Startled, Peter scrambles backward, demanding to know why he hasn't cleared out yet. Lion just smiles warmly, joking that Peter was sleeping so peacefully he didn't have the heart to wake him. He holds out the bread again, asking if he wants a bite, but Peter stubbornly turns his face away with a sharp grunt. Seeing that the gentle approach isn't working, Lion decides it's time for a direct intervention. Smiling, he leans forward, lightly grabs Peter's cheeks, and playfully pops a piece of the warm bread straight into his mouth. Peter gasps in pure shock, but the second he actually bites down, his eyes instantly light up. Overwhelmed by the delicious, savory flavor, all his stubbornness completely melts away, and he starts eagerly devouring the loaf with both hands. Lion watches him with a warm, amused smile, offering him another portion and mentioning that it was actually his own personal share. Holding the golden brown roll, Peter feels incredibly conflicted. This is just normal, everyday bread with no fancy ingredients, yet it tastes better than anything he has ever eaten in his life. He quietly mutters that adults normally only do nice things for show, bitterly recalling how his previous prospective parents treated him kindly, only to discard him the moment they realized he didn't instantly view them as his real family. To Peter, all adults are just liars. Lion listens to the heavy confession patiently before pointing out a simple truth. He notes that while upset, adults often skip meals and regret it later, Peter is eating remarkably well despite how angry he is. Kneeling in the golden sunset, Lion explains that he baked this bread himself, and he's simply happy to see someone enjoying it. Hearing those genuine words, Peter's stubborn defenses finally crumble. He begins crying dramatically, but because he still has a bit of pride left, he insists through his tears that he's only weeping because the bread is just too delicious. Lion smiles, asking if that's really the case, and Peter quietly nods. Standing up to dust off his clothes, Lion promises to bake even more and bring them to him next time. He extends his pinky finger to seal the deal. Skeptical but definitely intrigued, Peter asks if he's actually serious. Lion confidently smirks, noting that he has never once broken a promise in his life. Staring at their linked pinkies, Peter softly murmurs that he'll eat 2 loaves next time. Lion pats his head, playfully questioning why he'd only eat 2 when he could easily manage 3. Peter blushes and huffs, but off in the distance, the director is moved to tears. It has been years since she last saw Peter smile. She realizes that if the staff had only shown the same patience and sincerity as Lion, the children might have opened their hearts much sooner. Lion walks Peter back to join the other children just as the sun begins to set. The villagers are getting ready to head out, waving goodbye and thanking the staff. But as Lion and Lixel prepare to leave, the director runs up to them, clasping her hands and begging them to stay just a little longer so the orphanage can properly express its gratitude. She excitedly reveals that she made a quick call and a very special guest is on the way. She asks if the brothers would be willing to stay behind to receive a priest's blessing. Over in the corner, Lixel's eyes go wide with absolute shock and triumph. His incredibly risky, elaborate plan to secure a quiet, private checkup for Lion from a temple priest has actually succeeded perfectly. Trying to contain his immense excitement, Lixel bows politely, saying it would be rude to refuse such overwhelming kindness and gratefully accepting the offer. As the director warmly guides the disguised brothers back inside the building, the sun finally dips below the horizon, and the priest's arrival grows closer by the second. Sitting on a quiet sofa inside the orphanage, Lixel starts having second thoughts. He looks over at his brother and hesitantly suggests that maybe they should call off the meeting with the priest. Given the notoriously bad blood between their family and the temple, Lixel is worried this priest might hold a grudge and try to do something to Lion. To his absolute surprise, Lion doesn't even hesitate. He immediately smiles and agrees. In fact, Lion casually mentions that he just remembered some incredibly urgent business back at the mansion, specifically his upcoming baking class, and happily waves goodbye before booking it out the door. Lixel is left sitting there, letting out a heavy sigh. While he knows his brother desperately needs some divine healing, he can't risk exposing Lion to a hostile cleric. He decides the best move is to meet the priest alone first, play detective, and make sure the guy is actually safe to be around. Lixel slips through the chapel doors and is formally introduced to High Priest Licht. Standing in front of a colorful stained glass window, Licht looks like your classic, refined anime prodigy with glasses. He warmly welcomes Lixel, thanking him for being their anonymous donor. As they sit down to talk, Lixel quietly studies the priest. He is surprised by just how young Licht is. To be a high priest allowed to travel outside the temple at that age, this guy has to be an absolute genius. When Licht expresses his deep gratitude, Lixel doesn't take the credit. Instead, he admits that the entire charity drive was actually his older brother's idea. Then, Lixel decides to lay his cards on the table. He confesses that he didn't do all this out of pure, selfless generosity. He orchestrated the entire volunteer event as a desperate, calculated plan to get a high-tier priest to examine his older brother, who has been incredibly weak and sickly since childhood. Licht smiles gently, telling Lixel to take a breath and calm down. But then he drops a bit of a bombshell. He actually snuck out to the orphanage in secret, intentionally dodging the temple's radar. For a second, Lixel's heart drops, thinking the priest is about to reject him. But instead, Licht makes a surprising proposal. He tells Lixel to bring his brother back to the orphanage in exactly 3 days, right at dawn. 3 days later, in the dead of night, Lixel bursts into Lion's room. Finding his brother casually lounging at his desk instead of sleeping, Lixel immediately starts lecturing him about neglecting his fragile health. When Lion asks what's going on, a breathless Lixel reveals that the priest has officially agreed to give him a full checkup out of gratitude for the donations. Internally, Lion is a bit confused. Ever since he unlocked his mana and started leveling up his crafting and foraging, his mana shock symptoms have completely vanished. He's actually in great shape. But seeing how genuinely worried his brother is, Lion just smiles warmly and accepts the offer. Lixel warns him that they need to be ready by dawn. When morning comes, the brothers arrive back at the orphanage. Lion is immediately impressed when he spots a bottle of high-grade holy water on the table. It's a sacred, difficult-to-make item, proving that Licht really is as talented as they say. Licht enters the room, and after some polite greetings, Lion asks why they had to meet so early. Licht hesitates before explaining that he recently had a vivid, prophetic dream. He saw children sleeping peacefully in a golden field, with the two brothers standing over them like protectors. The warm feeling of the dream was so intense that he felt compelled to meet them in person to see what kind of people they really were. But Licht isn't just relying on good vibes. As they talk, he quietly analyzes the boys. Noticing Lixel's refined speech and their obvious disguises, the priest easily deduces that these two are from the prestigious Asteri family. He starts wondering if this is some kind of temple infiltration plot, deciding he'll uncover their true motives during the physical exam. Licht politely asks Lixel to wait outside so they can begin. Once they are alone, he begins channeling a bright wave of divine energy over Lion. And then, Licht completely freezes. The blessing was cast flawlessly, yet Lion's body shows absolutely no reaction to the sacred magic. Doubting his own abilities, Licht focuses his mind and unleashes a massive, swirling hurricane of green divine energy, to the point where Lion's hair is literally glowing from the sheer force. But still, nothing happens. Lion just sits there, completely relaxed, casually mentioning that he feels pretty refreshed. This absolutely breaks the priest's brain. He knows there are only 3 reasons a human body would fail to react to a high priest's blessing. Either an incredibly powerful mage is actively blocking the magic, the person is already in perfect physical health, or they were born with a tragically short, limited lifespan. Looking at Lion's calm, grateful expression, Licht immediately assumes the worst. Deeply moved, he grabs Lion's hands in a tight, desperate grip. He passionately begs the young master to come find him at the temple if he ever finds himself in unbearable pain or unable to sleep, swearing that he will save him no matter what. Lion is a bit startled by this sudden, intense burst of drama, but he politely agrees just to calm him down. Lion steps back out into the courtyard to meet up with his brother, quietly wondering why the priest was acting so incredibly weird and intense. Later that day, back at the Asteri castle, the brothers walk through the sunlit courtyard near their carriage. Lixel smiles, relieved to see that Lion looks so energized. Lion heartily agrees, privately laughing because that massive blast of holy energy actually cured the muscle soreness he got from pulling all-nighters in the kitchen. But as Lion looks at his brother, He notices Lixil is running on fumes, sporting some serious dark circles under his eyes. When he tells him to go get some rest, Lixil dismisses it, saying he has to head straight to his grueling mana training. Lion can only sigh as he watches his brother walk away, clearly pushing himself way too hard. Sylvia, currently disguised as the maid Elvia, stands beside Lion and watches the young heir depart. She gently suggests that if Lion is really worried about Lixil's health, he should bring it up with Pithric during their upcoming meeting to plan the coming-of-age ceremony. Lion nods, noting that their grandfather has been looking pretty stressed lately too. Watching her young master show so much protective care for his family, Sylvia smiles to herself, wondering if she should bring him something sweet to help him relax. We find our boy Lion back in the castle kitchen, getting his hands dirty and kneading some dough. Standing close by is his newly appointed personal maid, Elvia, who is actually Sylvia in disguise. Lion, still getting used to the whole secret identity thing, casually smiles and thanks her, calling her Sylvia by mistake. She immediately gives him a look and corrects him, reminding him she's Elvia now. Lion quickly apologizes for almost blowing her cover. He explains that he's trying to bake a batch of homemade cookies as a thank you gift for his grandfather, Pithric. But then he hesitates, realizing he actually has no idea if the tough old patriarch even likes sweet stuff. Elvia tries to ease his mind, letting him know that even if his grandfather isn't big on sugar, he'd gladly eat literally anything Lion makes. Still, Lion wants this to actually taste good. He doesn't want Pithric just choking down sugary pastries out of pure grandfatherly obligation. Looking around the kitchen, inspiration hits him. He spots some dark purple sweet potatoes. Instead of loading the recipe up with processed white sugar, he decides to use the natural, subtle sweetness of the sweet potatoes. Elvia looks a bit skeptical about putting sweet potatoes in cookie dough, but Lion is locked in. He confidently chops them up, determined to make something his grandfather can actually enjoy without getting a massive sugar rush. Our boy rolls out the dough and starts pressing out cute little shapes like cats, ducks, and stars. He even makes a mental note to commission a local tanner for some custom cookie cutters down the line. He pops the trays into the oven, and when the timer hits, the result is a massive success. The sweet potato chip cookies come out beautifully crisp on the outside and incredibly soft and fragrant on the inside. Elvia is genuinely shocked that he managed to pull off professional grade, adorable pastries using nothing but a basic dough recipe. She hands him one to try, and when Lion takes a bite, his eyes light up. These things are somehow better than the chocolate chip cookies from his previous life. Right on cue, his system chimes in, announcing that his cooking skill has officially leveled up to apprentice level 3, and the recipe is now saved. Elvia agrees that the mild sweetness is absolutely perfect for the patriarch's taste. When she offers to help him pack them up, Lion politely tells her to go take a break, saying he has one more thing to prepare. Once she steps out and he's finally alone, Lion lets out a sigh of relief. No more hiding his actions from his maid. He can finally use his system inventory in peace. Now that his cooking is at level 3, he's got access to better recipes and plenty of high-quality ingredients. He decides the cookies need a partner. If he pairs them with the right beverage, it'll massively boost their physical comfort and fatigue-relieving effects. He decides on a training aid drink. This is a deep red beverage made by simmering 5 lesser health potions over a low flame, mixing in fresh orange slices, lemon, star anise root, and a single drop of aqua rosemary oil. It's basically designed to fight off the physical pain and exhaustion that comes from hardcore combat and mana training, which makes it the ultimate cheat code gift for both his grandfather and his overworked brother. After carefully simmering and straining the deep red liquid, Lion takes a quick spoonful to test it. It's incredibly warm and comforting, tasting almost exactly like a rich, spiced mulled wine. He arranges the warm red drink and the sweet potato cookies together on a wooden tray. Right on cue, the system chimes again, congratulating him on creating his very first special beverage set. He even unlocks a special achievement for aesthetic food presentation, landing himself a massive bonus of 3,000 shillings. Talk about a solid payday for a kitchen session. Pleased with his culinary skills, Lion packs everything into a bag and heads straight to Pithric's study. When Lion walks into the massive study, carrying the tray himself, Pithric looks up from his desk in complete shock. The old man practically demands to know why a young master is carrying his own food instead of letting the servants handle it. Lion just chuckles, telling his grandfather that he wanted to personally deliver the fruits of his labor. He sets the tray down, explaining that the warm drink is infused with a health potion, specially paired with homemade cookies. Intrigued, Pithric picks up a cute little bear-shaped cookie and takes a bite. The reaction is instant. The cookie literally melts in his mouth, filling him with a delicate, comforting sweetness that instantly lifts his spirits. It's completely different from any heavy, sugary pastry he's had before. While Pithric is having a silent spiritual experience over a bear cookie, a system notification pops up in Lion's vision. His cooking skill just leaped to apprentice level 4. Since the system awards bonus experience only when someone genuinely loves the food, Lion's experience bar is absolutely soaring. He lets out a quiet sigh of relief, glad his grandfather actually likes it. Pithric quickly coughs and composes his stern exterior, putting the cookie down. He gruffly tells Lion to spit it out and state his real business, knowing his grandson didn't just show up to play personal pastry chef. Lion scratches his head, admitting he can't pull a fast one on the patriarch. He explains that with his coming-of-age ceremony right around the corner, he wants his grandfather to ease up on Lixel's brutal training schedule. He just wants the whole family to be healthy and in high spirits for the big day. Hearing this, Pithrick is secretly overwhelmed with pride. In most noble families, siblings are actively trying to ruin each other to steal the inheritance, yet his own grandsons are out here looking out for one another's health. Still, he keeps his stoic poker face intact, gruffly agreeing to let Lixel train on his own terms until the ceremony is over. Lion beams with a radiant smile, thanking him. But before he can leave, Pithrick stops him and asks what Lion wants as a coming-of-age gift. Lion looks completely panicked. He frantically waves his hands, insisting he doesn't want or need anything at all, before nervously saying goodbye and booking it out of the study. Pithrick is left sitting there, completely baffled. Why does this boy have absolutely zero greed? Gift-giving is supposed to be the absolute highlight of the ceremony. But as he stares at the closed door, Pithrick starts overthinking. He reasons that a coming-of-age ceremony is a test. If Lion says he wants nothing, it can only mean one thing. His genius grandson is throwing down a challenge. He's testing Pithrick to see if he can read his mind and find the ultimate, perfect gift on his own. Suddenly feeling the immense weight of this self-imposed 4D chess match, Pithrick sits in a mixture of dramatic stress and fierce devotion, desperately trying to figure out what legendary artifact could possibly satisfy his grandson. Meanwhile, Lion happily strolls down the hallway, completely satisfied with how well his kitchen diplomacy turned out. Having successfully smoothed things over with his grandfather, Lion heads back to his quarters feeling incredibly light on his feet. The comfort of his newly unlocked physical stamina is a total game changer, allowing him to move with an ease he never could have dreamed of in his previous, frail body. But while our boy is basically floating down the hallway, he decides to check in on his younger brother, Lixel. Let's just say, the vibe in Lixel's room is not immaculate. Lion slides open the study doors, carrying a tray of snacks, only to find Lixel completely face-planted on his desk. Bro is buried under a literal mountain of books and documents, looking like he's pulling a desperate, all-night cram session. Lion can't help but tease him, throwing out a goofy nickname to poke fun at the absolute state of his usually tidy brother's room. Lixel instantly turns bright red, desperately covering his mouth because he is utterly mortified that his older brother caught him slipping like this. To ease the tension, Lion slides over a plate of his freshly baked sweet potato chip cookies. Lixel is running on pure fumes, so he takes a bite and immediately freezes. Our boy's baking is so good it basically forces Lixel's brain to reboot. The delicate, perfectly balanced flavor is so delicious that Lixel is just staring at the cookie in complete awe. Seeing his brother's sheer delight, Lion drops the good news. He talked to their terrifying grandfather and secured permission for Lixel to take a breather. He explains that with his coming-of-age ceremony around the corner, he wanted Pithrick to ease up on the grueling training schedule so the whole family could actually show up in high spirits, not looking like zombies. Lixel is deeply moved by how much Lion cares about him. He mutters a soft thank you, though internally, he knows Pithrick's brutal training assignments aren't actually the reason he's this exhausted. Seeing his brother looking all nervous and tense, Lion starts playfully teasing him, asking if he's secretly writing love letters or if he's got his eye on a girl. Absolutely horrified by the implication, Lixel quickly sets the record straight. It's not a girl, and it's not even their grandfather's training. The real reason he's stressing out is Lion's upcoming coming-of-age ritual. Lion realizes his brother is talking about the legendary library labyrinth. In House Astery, this ritual is a massive deal. Entrants have to navigate a magical library that literally scales to the user's level, guiding them to the exact magic they need most. If you manage to reach the end, you get to walk away with a powerful magical item. But if you try to fight the library or conquer it by force, it turns into an impenetrable, endless maze. Knowing that the original owner of his body used to use this quiet, peaceful library as a literal hiding spot, Lion smiles. He's secretly touched that Lixel is losing sleep, worrying about how he'll survive in there without any mana. Lion tries to reassure his brother that the ritual is just a formality, but Lixel violently shakes his head. No, you don't understand, big bro. The labyrinth isn't the problem. The real boss fight of this ceremony is the outfits. Lixel drops a massive truth bomb about their incredibly powerful grandfather. Pithrick Asteri has absolutely zero sense of aesthetics. The patriarch is a legendary warrior, but left to his own devices, the man will unironically pull up to a formal event wearing a flamboyant, mismatched disaster featuring a garish cape, bright pants, and colorful heels. Back in the day, their advisor Sylvia was the only one who could physically block him from walking out of the castle looking like a circus clown. But now that Sylvia is retired, Lixel is in complete despair. They are doomed to suffer a public embarrassment of catastrophic proportions. Honestly, Lion completely agrees that Pithrick's legendary lack of taste must be stopped at all costs. Smiling confidently, he tells Lixel to relax. He promises to find a way to handle the fashion crisis, proposing that the entire family wear matching, professionally tailored outfits for the ceremony. To track down a master tailor, Lion heads down to visit Mudu's family. He brings a bag of his special cookies, which instantly wins over Leah and her excited kids. Once the kids are happily distracted by the snacks, Lion gets down to business. He asks Leah if she can introduce him to the incredibly talented tailor who volunteered at the orphanage. Lion remembers watching the guy effortlessly alter clothes and make gorgeous outfits out of literal scraps, which is a major flex for any craftsman. Leah looks instantly hesitant and a bit distressed when he brings it up. She agrees to give him the directions, but she leaves him with a warning. Once he actually gets to the shop, he'll understand why she was so hesitant to send him there. Lion follows the directions to a super sketchy, run-down, overgrown area on the edge of the estate. He finds a weathered, creaking sign hanging by frayed ropes and covered in cobwebs. The name on the sign? Andre. Feeling a little bit of dread, Lion steps inside. He walks down a creepy, dimly lit hallway lined with silent, staring mannequins. At the very end of the hall, there's a bright doorway, and he can see the silhouette of a man standing inside. Lion politely calls out, and the tailor, Andre, gasps in absolute, dramatic excitement. Bro is reacting like he hasn't seen another human being in years. Andre instantly recognizes Lion. Even though Lion's hair and eyes look different from the day they met at the orphanage, the tailor knows that face anywhere. Lion politely apologizes, explaining that he was in disguise that day because of his noble status, and formally introduces himself as the eldest grandson of the Asteri family. Andre is completely flustered. He cannot believe a high-ranking noble actually tracked him down to his dusty, forgotten little shop. Andre quickly invites him into his cluttered workshop. As they walk, Lion spots a glittering grand prize trophy from the Empire's most prestigious design competition sitting on a wooden shelf. Okay, so the guy isn't just a random volunteer. He's a certified genius. Andre offers to brew some tea, and Lion decides to pull out his secret weapon, a plate of his homemade sweet potato cookies. Andre takes a single bite, and the crisp, perfect crunch instantly sends him into a full-blown emotional meltdown. The man literally clutches his chest in passionate delight, weeping tears of pure joy. He starts declaring that this cookie is a work of pure art, comparing the flavor to a crown prince falling in love with a country maiden at first sight. Talk about a dramatic food review. Swept up in the emotional overload of a single cookie, Andre looks at Lion with tears in his eyes. He says that even though the rumors call Lion a useless cast-off, the young master is actually a deep, beautiful mystery. He promises to speak with absolute frankness, boasting that he has the skill to draft, cut, and embroider garments more beautifully than anyone else in the entire empire. But then, his face falls. He drops some heavy personal history. Andre is actually the illegitimate child of a noble house. Because of his birth, the elitist noble families treated him like absolute trash. They claimed that letting an illegitimate commoner handle their clothing was a stain on their high dignity. Once the toxic rumors spread, all his wealthy sponsors abandoned him, forcing him into isolation. Andre hesitantly suggests that if Lion actually wants to commission him, it would be much safer to lie and tell everyone the matching family outfits were made by some mysterious, unknown newcomer, so Lion doesn't get dragged through the mud. Lion doesn't even blink. He just calmly holds up a hand to stop the self-deprecating speech and gently asks if he can see some of the clothes Andre has already made. Andre leads him over to his collection, showing off a variety of ready-made dresses, workwear, and trousers. The moment Lion looks at them, his eyes completely light up. Every single garment is a pristine, high-quality masterpiece. Despite the creepy shop and the terrible rumors, this rundown room is holding a lineup of brilliant designs. Lion takes a close look at Andre's ready-made garments, and honestly, he is incredibly impressed. Even though these cotton pants and dresses are made from the cheapest, lowest-grade fabric imaginable, they somehow possess a remarkable 2-star quality. To Lion, this is a massive green flag. It means Andre's raw technique, from the way he cuts the fabric to his stitching, is top tier. Our boy can't help but wonder what a master craftsman like this could pull off if he actually had access to premium, high-quality materials. Determined to lock down this talent, Lion reaches out and asks Andre to create matching family outfits under his own name for the upcoming coming-of-age ceremony. Andre instantly gasps and starts sweating bullets. He starts panicking, protesting that while this is a dream opportunity, Lion will face massive ridicule and humiliation if the high nobility finds out they're wearing clothes made by a despised, illegitimate tailor. But Lion is completely unbothered. Calm and confident as ever, he assures Andre that he'll take full responsibility and make sure absolutely no one dares to talk trash. He points out that the Asteri family's prestige literally rivals the imperial family itself. He looks Andre dead in the eye and asks if he's willing to take this leap of faith and produce 3 outfits in time for the ceremony. That is all Andre needs to hear. Gripping his fabric tightly, his heart starts pounding with a sudden, overwhelming desire to work with fine materials again. Swept away by Lion's reassuring offer to just focus on his craft without worrying about toxic nobles, Andre places a hand over his heart and enthusiastically accepts the commission. Eagerly grabbing a quill, Andre asks what style and details they should go for. Lion lays out his vision. The garments need to be clean yet elegant, cohesive as a family set, but individually unique. As Andre is writing this down, he suddenly freezes in pure horror. It finally clicks that even the grand patriarch of the family, the terrifying grandfather, will be wearing his creation. He is initially terrified, but quickly reassures himself that no random noble would ever dare question the choices of the powerful Astery household anyway. Fully resolved, Andre proudly promises to do his absolute best. When Andre asks about their fabric preferences, Lion just smiles and hands over the legendary Astery fabric catalog. Andre stares in absolute awe at the golden embellished book, barely able to believe he's even allowed to lay eyes on such a mythical resource. With Lion's permission, he opens the catalog, and a gasp-inducing golden light literally radiates from the pages. The catalog is packed with the finest, most exotic textiles from across the continent, including rare elf's hair and magically treated fairy's breath. Andre is completely spellbound, flipping through the pages in utter delight. Suddenly, his eyes stop on a particular sample of magically treated worsted yarn. He recognizes it instantly, recalling that a certain noble lady regularly commissioned clothes from this exact fabric back when his business was actually thriving. He had always wondered where it came from, but the catalog lists absolutely no information about its creator. Lion examines the swatch, and his system interface pops up to do some quick detective work. It identifies the item as the Archmage's devoted love, a 3-star worsted yarn crafted by an Archmage for his daughter, which is imbued with powerful protective magic against physical and magical impacts. Connecting the description of the Archmage to his own family's history, Lion smiles knowingly. He declares that since they're going for a matching family look, they absolutely have to use this legendary fabric. Andre eagerly agrees and gets ready to take Lion's measurements. But their session is suddenly interrupted by a massive commotion outside. Lixil has arrived, and he didn't just walk over. He brought dozens of wagons with him. Lion and Andre step out to find the courtyard completely packed with workers unloading top-tier sewing machines, high-quality thread, mannequins, and premium fabrics. Lixil stands nearby looking incredibly confident, explaining that since this is for his brother's one and only coming-of-age ceremony, this level of support is only natural. While Lion is dryly amused by his younger brother's extreme overpreparedness, Andre is practically weeping with joy. He starts eagerly requesting to replace every single one of his old, worn-out tools with this sparkling, state-of-the-art equipment. Once his measurements are taken, Lion asks Andre for one more favor, to teach him some basic tailoring skills in his spare time. Both Andre and his assistant are completely flustered by the request. A noble wanting to learn manual labor? But Lion gently explains his philosophy. He tells Andre that after seeing his immense passion and eye for detail, he believes that to truly appreciate and understand a creator's intent, he should first learn the fundamentals of the craft himself. Deeply moved by Lion's profound respect for his trade, Andre enthusiastically agrees to teach him everything he knows. While Andre goes to take Lixil's measurements, Lion wanders over to a wooden table in the workshop. He picks up a basic cotton pants pattern, wondering how Andre managed to turn such poor material into a decent garment. Deciding to try hand sewing the piece without the help of any automated machines, Lion pulls out the magical artisan's repair kit he received as a bonus from the magic shop. Lion sits at a desk in the warm sunlight and opens the kit. He pulls out a glowing, self-threading needle and begins stitching. To his surprise, he finds the meticulous task incredibly peaceful. The magical needle projects faint, glowing guidelines in his vision, calming his mind and allowing his stitches to grow remarkably, even as his hands fly across the fabric. He is so deeply focused on his work that he doesn't even notice when Lixil returns. When Lion finally pauses and sees his brother watching him, he quickly apologizes for not noticing him sooner. Lixil just smiles warmly, completely amazed by the intense concentration his older brother was just displaying. When Andre comes over to inspect Lion's handiwork, he gasps in absolute shock. Even though the stitches are slightly uneven, the progress is incredibly impressive for a complete beginner. The sight of those hand-sewn seams suddenly triggers a dramatic realization in Andre's mind. He begins stitching and writing furiously, entering a passionate frenzy. He realizes he had been so focused on ready-to-wear garments that he completely forgot hand-sewing is the very foundation of elegant, custom, formal wear. Watching the tailor completely lose himself in his own world of design and fabric, Lion just sighs in amusement. He turns to Lixil and suggests they head back for the day. Lixil agrees, gently reminding him that they have a formal dinner scheduled with their grandfather that evening.